Step in my dojo, you step in my dojo, you step in my.
It's weekly download time. 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 And now we're going to learn some stuff. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the weekly download, the weekliest download there is. Today, we are in for a treat because by popular request, people wanted me to cover remixing. And in retrospect, I'm like, how was there not a weekly download on remixing? Good thing I've got you around with all your awesome suggestions. But let's just talk a little bit about remixing first, like the legality of it and kind of what it means and everything. So remixing is basically where you take a finished piece of work and you use it as an element in something that is new, okay? So this is different from copying. Copying is where you just take, you know, someone else's thing and you try and remake it exactly, right? And then remixing is basically like you're transforming it into something that is new. And then, you know, when you're fully like DJ Shadow level remixing, that's not even really remixing anymore. Like once you're drawing from like, because like with a remix, you're taking one thing and then adding your new thing and making a third thing. Whereas like, you know, if you're talking about like beat digger style hip hop production, that's more like sampling. Like when you're sampling like 20 different vinyl records to make a new song, that is kind of generally viewed as so transformative that it's no longer remixing, okay? So all the techniques that I'm going to show you here can be used when you're creating music with samples, but really I want to talk about the middle option. You know, we've got copying over here, we've got transforming here, and then we've got creating something new that involves sampling over here, which is kind of remixing, but in like a loose sense of the word, right? So yes, Trish, mashups would definitely count as remixes. And we're going to talk about the different kinds of remixes. But I want, like today's class, we're squarely on remixing. Like when you're taking some sort of a finished piece of work, and then you're basically making a new thing where the face of the new thing that you're making is the same face as the original thing, only it's been transformed in some way. So when I say the face, I'm referring to the main kind of like essence of a song. You know, if it's a song with a chorus and the title is the lyric of the chorus, that sung title lyric would be the face, right? Or let's say we're talking about, you know, a song like I did a remix of this song called Thunderdome by Minnesota, where the original track had this incredible build up to it that I was just like, I don't really feel the need to change this much. Like I added a couple extra hi-hats to make it easier to DJ, but that's it. Like I didn't really do much to that. And then I made a completely different drop with like all entirely new elements, right? But what makes it still a remix is that when that intro happens, you can very clearly tell that it is this Thunderdome track by Minnesota and G. Jones, right? So basically when you're remixing, what you want to do is find something where you like the face, right? Find something where you really like, you know, what if it's a pop song, you love the chorus, or you know, maybe if it's like, you know, a dubstep song, there's like a vocal in the turnaround that says something cool that you really like, you'd want to use that thing. Or you know, let's say it's a really iconic EDM song that is instrumental, but like Sandstorm by Darude. You know, you would definitely use that main acid Sandstorm riff in your Sandstorm remix, or else it kind of doesn't matter that it's a remix of Sandstorm. Then, you know, you'd just be using that as a sound, and it would be mutated so much that you kind of like, you know, I don't know, it's not really worth calling it a remix. Okay, so we're talking about when you take the face of the original track and preserve the essence of the original track in such a way that the listener is going to be able to be like, oh, that's this track, this is a remix of that track, but different. Awesome. Okay, so before you remix anything, I would really like to recommend this film called Everything is a Remix, and I've put it in the notes here. I've got these notes for you that I made, but I'd really like to recommend the film Everything is a Remix. Everything is a Remix is going to help you to understand, you know, how an artist thinks and what your kind of role in the community of artists is, and to understand like when you're copying versus when you're transforming, which is when you're like combining and creating something new. And it'll help you to understand, like, you know, what people are going to kind of value and what people are not going to value, and like why it's valuable. And it'll also help you to get over a lot of the kind of hang-ups, because a lot of artists, especially you know, especially artists who are just getting into music, they'll be like really idealistic about their music, and they'll be like, look, I got to come up with everything myself. I don't want to watch a lot of tutorials. I don't want to like you know, I don't want to listen to too much other music that's similar to what I want to make. I want to do all my sound design myself and like figure out every melody on the piano and blah, blah, blah. And usually what happens when you do that, if you are not a seasoned producer already, is when you start to do that, you just end up making music that's like not really listenable to other people. And it takes so much more work, and like, you're pretty much just frustrated. Like you're not going to be happy with it. If like you start and that's your approach, you're not going to be happy with it. So I like to advise people usually when they're just starting out to start by remixing, because then you're not going to be fumbling around in the dark at the lower levels of the pyramid of importance. You can go right to the top level as though you were a pop music mastermind who can, you know, come up with amazing hooks and amazing melodies and amazing chord progressions that are going to speak to the masses, you know? So it's a great shortcut to working at the top level, because the things that you learn when you're working at the top level are more important to learn earlier in your learning path than the things that you're going to learn by fumbling around at the bottom level and just trying to fight your way up. Usually by the time you have like a beat and a bass line and some of the other sounds going on, you're so sick of your loop that you're not like, this song's about having pizza on the way. Got a pizza on the way. I got a pizza on the way. You know, like you don't come up with that because you're bummed. You're bummed. You're stressed out. You've been fighting it out in the weeds for so long that you're not going to put the cherry on top, right? So if you watch me do my timer beats in the morning, or right? So if you watch me do my timer beats in the morning, or if you watch any of my live streams, usually I'm trying to find whatever that top level thing is basically right away in the workflow. You know, I don't like fighting my way up from the bottom because often the songs sound kind of like interchangeable iterations of a formula, and not like they're unique and special and that there's something different from other songs about this song. So remixing is a great way to start working at the top level. And if you've never finished a song that you think is excellent, it's a great way to get to the point where you can make something that you can be proud of and that you can share. Because properly understood, remixing retains the face of the original song. So it is a big hack. It is a big shortcut. You just got to give credit to the original people. But giving credit to the original people is often a major part of why you would remix. Because when, let's say there's a hit record, like a major laser track, and everybody has just beaten that track to death. They've all listened to that track so many times that when you play that track, even though it's a big hit record and the crowd are going to go off, there's going to be a subsection of the audience that is like, I didn't come here to hear you play stuff off the radio. You know, I can hear that top 40 track anywhere. I own that track on my computer. You know, we're not hearing something that only you can do. So why would we give only you ticket money, right? So, I mean, that's the idea as a musician, is to be doing something that only you can do, right? And when there's always room for someone unique, but there is not room in the music industry for people who are unoriginal and are just copying what other people do. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions about the music industry. A lot of the time people think that, you know, this generic crap is what sells, and that these managers and agents are out there and they're like, no, make generic crap, right? But there's always, like, what makes it sound generic is the ubiquity of it. But pretty much, like, you know, any big pop phenomenon, there's legitimately something different about that. Like, you might not like their music, but there's legitimately something different about the sound of their music or their branding or something that does make them not generic, right? And it's really easy to sit on your high horse of underground coolness and, like, you know, poo-poo, you know, Katy Perry and Justin Bieber and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that they are doing things that are striking a chord with people and that are pushing the envelope a bit. You know, I'm not saying that they're, like, you know, bastions of experimentality and originality, but, you know, you shouldn't assume that all popular music is derivative, because it's not, and popular music is always moving forwards. Anyway, when you are developing yourself as an artist, it's really hard to get over the hump with your fan base. It's really hard to get, you know, to go from having, like, some fans to having a bunch of fans. And a lot of the time, the right choice in remix can just be, like, a total, like, turning point in your career. It really can. Because DJs who want to have the instant pop appeal of whatever that face is, whatever that main element is, you know, like, let's say you're remixing a major laser track, when that vocal comes in, the crowd's going to hear that vocal, they're going to recognize it, and they're going to be like, oh, cool, I like this song, I'm on board. And then when, instead of playing the original version that everybody has, you come with this totally different other version, people are going to be like, holy shit, what an amazing artist. I need to follow this artist. All right, so welcome to the ill.gates notes on remixing. This is a systematic process of remixing that I would not recommend that you start with this. Like, if you're in the EDM cookbook, because this is destined for the EDM cookbook as well. But I would recommend that you familiarize yourself with the other basic recipes in the EDM cookbook before we get into this. But this is pretty much a linear guide to remixing that I think is gonna help. All right, so now the first thing to do, right, is to find some source material and analyze your source material, okay? So that means that you need to get the audio in the maximum quality that you possibly can. If you're just making a timer beat, yeah, sample a YouTube video. But if you are trying to make, like if you were to actually download a YouTube video and then play it at a club, the 320 maximum audio and probably just the fact that things have been encoded a couple times by the time it makes it to the video usually means that the audio is going to be kind of shitty. If you're just sampling like a "oh my god" or a "call 911 now," yeah, it's just sampling someone yelling on YouTube. The quality difference isn't going to be that bad. But if you were sampling like a long singing vocal, or you were sampling like an instrumental performance, or even just a full mix, if you want to have the full mix playing at any point, you need to use a lossless file. So that means AIFF. You were sampling like an instrumental performance, or even just a full mix. If you want to have the full mix playing at any point, you need to use a lossless file. So that means AIFF, WAV, or FLAC format. Okay, and if you're seriously trying to remix, I would say that those formats should be your starting point. Sometimes you can also get the stems. Okay, so the stems for a track, they might have been released, like Native Instruments have this really cool stems format that's like a 4-stem format, so you can have like beat, bass, melodies and vocals is usually how people do it, and then you can play that in your decks and Tractor, and you could like take the beat entirely out and then put the beat from another song without even having to actually open up your DAW. It brings the stems into a DJ format. So there's tons of artists that release their track in the stems format. I've released a couple things in stems format. Nobody gave much of a shit, so I kind of stopped because it's like not really, I don't know. It hasn't really taken off yet, but there are lots of people who do it. And if you go on Beatport or whatever, you can find stems, and that's fantastic. Stems are going to make your life a lot easier as a remixer, but we're going to talk about the different kinds of remixes in a bit. But get high quality if you can, get stems if you can. A lot of the time, if it's a famous song, you can just get the MIDI. Like if you go here and you type in like Calvin Harris MIDI, you'll find tons of websites where you can just get the MIDI for all these tracks. So like, let's say you're remixing like Nirvana. You could Google it and get the MIDI, which would really help you figure out the chords. It would really help you to figure out the key and the BPM. So I would say that at a bare minimum, you need a high quality version of the song, and you need to know what key and what BPM it is at a bare minimum. Okay. Other great things to analyze: finding out what the main chords are in the main chord progression, figuring out what the face is, because remember, the face is what makes it a remix. If you're just using the audio as like a starting point, and you like go so far down the rabbit hole that it has nothing really to do with the original track, I would say you've used that piece of audio as a spark, and a spark, these are inspiring starting points for beginning the process. They're there to make you go, oh, when I hear that, I have all these ideas, right? That's the job of a spark. Whereas the job of the face is to sit on top of the hierarchy of importance and to be the most memorable and most thematic element of the song. So I would say you want to make sure that there is a face in the song. You might want to learn the melody so that you can play it on the piano. There might be some memorable harmony parts, etc. Anything else recognizable. Sometimes you make notes at this point. And when you get used to analyzing things like this, and you get used to hunting for things, usually this will tell you whether or not this is going to be good to remix. Like if you can't get a high quality rip of, like just don't sample off YouTube, or bad MP3s. Don't sample bad MP3s, because garbage in, garbage out, right? There's only so much you can do with a bad MP3. So I like to answer all of those questions right at the beginning, and then that's usually going to lead me to the next thing, is that given this analysis, this is when you decide your approach. Okay, so there's different kinds of remixes. A bootleg is where you are remixing a song that you do not have permission to remix. This is technically illegal, but it's not like you kicked a baby. I don't think anybody is going to really hold it against you. No one's going to think you're a bad person. You know, it just means that you can't sell it afterwards, and you might get a cease and desist from a record label where they tell you to take it down. And you also, if you do it enough and the algorithms on like SoundCloud or whatever can detect that you've done this, you can get your SoundCloud taken down. So that famously happened to EPROM, everybody's favorite glitchy bass producer, EPROM. He was remixing basically any time there was a really huge rap song, he would come up with an EPROM remix of it, and you should totally check it out. Like his Kendrick Lamar remix is incredible. His remix of "Bitch You Guessed It" is incredible. His remix of "N-Bombs in Paris" also incredible. And he basically just copied the MIDI that makes the song recognizable, copied the MIDI onto his own instruments, and then just like had the MIDI just change voices over a sick beat, and then the fills were made of glitchy versions of the original track. It was a very great recipe that he'd come up with for remixing. It was really effective, and a couple of them were getting like in the millions of plays on SoundCloud. So he set off the algorithms, and they destroyed his SoundCloud account, and he had to start and build a new SoundCloud account, and he was very sad. Okay, so you are running some risks, but really no one's going to sue you unless you've made enough money directly from that sample that it is going to be more than it costs them to take you to court, and it'll be worth their time. So like if you're not making any money from that remix, no one's going to sue you and try and take the money you didn't make, right? But if you're like Pretty Lights and you make a track with an illegal Etta James sample in it that suddenly becomes like anthem of the summer because it came out right when Etta James died, they're going to come knocking and you're going to owe them a lot of money. Okay, so that's a bootleg. A commercial remix is where you've been asked to do the remix, and in that case, you're going to be provided with a lot more resources. Sometimes people will give you the whole project file. Sometimes they'll give you the stems. Sometimes they'll give you the MIDI. Sometimes they'll give you some of the patches, right? But often when you give your remixer too much from the original project folder, a lot of the time people get kind of lost in the sauce with the original parts, and then they get lazy, and the remix doesn't really come out very different than the original. So a lot of the time when I'm doing remixes, especially big names, they won't give you any drums. They won't give you any of the main drop synth noises. They'll just give you like the chords, the face, and like maybe some build-up noises, and that's it. And then that forces all of the remixers on this commercial project to give you radically different remixes. And in my opinion, that's kind of a better approach. So if you are shopping out remixes, be aware that if you give people the whole project file a lot of the time, they'll get lazy and it won't be that different. Okay, so a mashup is a different category than a straight remix, because a mashup is basically where you take two or more songs and combine them to create something different. So, a famous mashup artist would be Girl Talk. And Girl Talk became famous for making these tracks where it was like 30 pop records in one track. And, the track would have like Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears and Kanye and then Eminem. And then all those would be over an instrumental that was like Nirvana with In Excess with Yellow or something, and it's just like this crazy there's no way you could ever license those samples. It's this crazy thing. And that became this whole big hipster movement, like in the early 2000s. All the hipsters, like all they wanted to do was listen to mashups. And that's cool. And mashups are great. You should check out OC Miso, OSYMYSO, and Girl Talk are very interesting mashup artists. And there's a lot of people who do like, interesting mashup stuff for live use.